Meet Hawthorne and Willow, an unlikely friendship that challenges common assumptions about wild predators. A baby bobcat and a baby wolf, both orphaned, arrived around the same time at a rescue center and were introduced despite coming from species that would never naturally grow up together. Caretakers made a careful but risky decision to raise them side by side to prevent the trauma of isolation. What happened next defied every law of nature and changed everything we thought we knew about the boundaries of love. This is the story of a bond that shouldn't exist, yet somehow became unbreakable. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The morning sun over the high desert of Oregon usually brought a sense of crisp clarity to the High Ridge Wildlife Sanctuary, illuminating the sagebrush and ponderosa pines with a golden hue. But inside the isolation ward of the veterinary clinic, the atmosphere was thick with the gray, suffocating weight of tragedy. It was the height of spring, the season of birth, which, for wildlife rehabilitators, inevitably meant it was also the season of death. Sarah Jenkins, the sanctuary's lead carnivore specialist, stood in the hallway, pressing the bridge of her nose with her thumb and forefinger. She was tired, a bone-deep exhaustion that came not from physical labor, but from the emotional attrition of losing patients. Behind the stainless steel door of Recovery Room A, a creature was mourning. It was a sound that could shred the soul of even the most hardened veteran, the high-pitched, desperate keen of a 3-week-old gray wolf pup. He had been found 2 days prior, shivering in a culvert near a logging road in Idaho. His pack was gone, likely victims of illegal baiting or a vehicle collision. The details remained murky. What was clear was that he was alone. He was severely dehydrated, his ribs cutting sharp lines against his coarse, matted puppy coat. And he was terrified. Wolves are creatures of connection. They are born into a complex social tapestry, woven together by touch, scent, and sound. To be a wolf alone is to be a wolf dying. "He won't take the bottle, Sarah," Mark, the veterinary technician, said softly, stepping out of the room. He held a bottle of specialized canine milk replacer, still full and cooling rapidly. He's pacing. He's calling for a mother who isn't coming. If his cortisol levels stay this high, his immune system is going to crash. We're looking at fading puppy syndrome. Sarah nodded, her jaw tight. "I know. Keep the incubator warm. Try again in 20 minutes. Force feed if you have to, but be gentle. He's traumatized, not stubborn." She turned and walked down the hall to Recovery Room B. If the sound in Room A was heartbreaking, the silence in Room B was ominous. Inside a small, towel-lined crate sat a creature entirely different but equally doomed. It was a bobcat kitten, roughly 4 weeks old. She had been discovered by hikers in Washington state, curled next to the body of her mother, who had succumbed to rodenticide poisoning. The kitten was fierce, a tiny ball of spotted fury, spitting and hissing at anyone who came near. But underneath the bravado, she was shutting down. She refused to eat. She stared at the back of the crate, her large amber eyes dull and glazed. "2 orphans," Sarah whispered to herself, looking through the observation glass. One dying of loneliness, the other dying of grief. In the wild, these 2 species were competitors. An adult wolf would kill a bobcat without hesitation. A mother bobcat would defend her territory against a wolf with lethal precision. They were oil and water, predator and competitor, ancient enemies in the great biological game of survival. But these weren't adults. They were infants, and they were failing to thrive. The protocol for rehabilitating top-tier predators is strict. You do not treat them like pets. You minimize human contact to prevent habituation. You keep them isolated until they can be placed with a surrogate of their own species. But High Ridge didn't have a surrogate wolf mother. They didn't have a nursing bobcat. They only had incubators, ticking clocks, and the cold reality of physiology. Sarah, Dr. Evans, the sanctuary's head veterinarian, walked up behind her holding 2 charts. We need to discuss the wolf pup and the kitten. Neither is stabilizing. I have an idea, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. But you're going to hate it, and the state board might revoke my permit if they don't understand the context. Dr. Evans raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Put them together. The silence in the hallway stretched, heavy and incredulous. Sarah, Dr. Evans sighed, rubbing his temples. A Canis lupus and a Lynx rufus? You want to put a pack animal with a solitary ambush predator? Even at this age, the communication barriers are massive. The wolf signals with his tail and ears. The cat signals with scent and posture. They don't speak the same language. The wolf could hurt the kitten just by playing too rough. The kitten could claw the pup's eyes out. They are dying of isolation, Sarah countered, her voice rising slightly. The wolf needs a pack. The kitten needs body heat and a littermate presence to feel safe enough to eat. We don't have other wolves. We don't have other bobcats. We have 2 babies who are terrified and alone. Biology says they are enemies, but psychology says they are just orphans needing comfort. Let me try. Supervised, 24/7. If there is one hiss, one snap, I pull them. Dr. Evans looked at the charts, then at the doors, and finally at Sarah. He saw the desperation of a caretaker who refused to let nature take its cruel course without a fight. You have 1 hour, Evans said. If it goes south, we separate them immediately and we never speak of it again. The introduction room was a neutral space, padded with thick blankets and smelling of antiseptic and lavender, a scent used to calm anxious animals. Sarah sat in the corner, legs crossed, a heavy pair of leather gloves on her hands just in case. First, they brought in the wolf pup. They named him Hawthorne for the resilient thorny bush that grows in the harsh scrublands. He was a pitiable sight, his oversized paws stumbling over the blankets, his dark fur patchy. He whined, a low, tremulous sound, and curled into a tight ball, shivering. Then, Mark brought in the carrier containing the bobcat. They named her Willow for her ability to bend without breaking. Mark opened the carrier door and stepped back. For a long time, nothing happened. The room was silent save for the hum of the HVAC system. Hawthorne kept his nose buried in his flank. Willow remained in the shadow of the carrier, invisible except for the glow of her eyes. Then a scent drifted across the room. Hawthorne lifted his head. His wet black nose twitched. He smelled milk, musk, and something wild. He smelled life. Slowly, painfully slowly, the wolf pup uncurled. He wobbled to his feet. He didn't look like a predator. He looked like a lost child. He let out a soft woof, more of a breath than a bark. From the darkness of the carrier, a small, tufted ear emerged. Then a paw. Willow crept out, her belly low to the ground. She was half the size of Hawthorne, a tiny speck of tawny fur and spots. She saw the wolf. She didn't hiss. She didn't arch her back. She froze. Sarah held her breath. This was the moment, the instinctual override. Hawthorne took a step forward. He lowered his front body in a clumsy play bow, his tail giving a tentative, jerky wag. It was the universal canine signal for, "I am friendly. Please don't hurt me." Willow stared at him. In cat language, a staring opponent is a threat. But Hawthorne wasn't staring. He was blinking, turning his head sideways, exposing his throat. He was making himself vulnerable. The wolf pup whined again, a sound of pure loneliness. It was that sound that bridged the gap of millions of years of evolution. Willow, driven by the instinct of a kitten who had lost her litter, recognized the distress. She crept forward, cautious but curious. Hawthorne stayed still, trembling. Willow reached him. She stretched her neck, her tiny pink nose twitching as she sniffed his ear. Hawthorne closed his eyes and leaned into the touch. He let out a long, shuddering sigh, his body finally relaxing for the first time in days. Willow decided he was not a threat. He was warm. He was soft. And he was there. She stepped closer and, with a clumsy grace, climbed over his front paws and curled up directly against his chest, burying her face in his neck fur. Hawthorne didn't flinch. Instead, he curled his head around her small body, resting his chin on her back. Sarah watched, tears pricking her eyes as the two orphans fell asleep within minutes, their breathing sinking into a shared rhythm. The wolf and the wildcat, the dog and the cat, the ancient enemies. They were just two babies, keeping the cold at bay. The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and heartwarming milestones. The unlikely pair was moved to a larger indoor enclosure, filled with climbing structures for Willow and tunnels for Hawthorne. The change in their health was miraculous. With Willow by his side, Hawthorne began to eat voraciously, gulping down his milk and later his meat gruel. With Hawthorne acting as a steady, warm presence, Willow's anxiety vanished. She ate with gusto, growing round and sleek. But raising them together required a level of vigilance that exhausted the staff. "Watch the paws," Sarah instructed the junior interns as they watched the pair play in the outdoor grass run. It was a bright June morning. "Hawthorne is growing too fast." It was true. The genetic disparity was becoming obvious. Hawthorne was exploding in size, his legs lengthening, his chest deepening. He was becoming a lanky, goofy adolescent wolf. Willow was growing too, but at the steady, compact rate of a bobcat. Hawthorne played with the exuberance of a puppy. He wanted to chase, to tackle, to chew. He would bound across the grass, ears flopping, and body slam Willow. "Easy, Hawthorne," Sarah called out, ready to intervene. But Willow was not a helpless victim. She was a bobcat. She possessed reflexes that Hawthorne could only dream of. As the clumsy wolf lumbered toward her, Willow would wait until the last millisecond, then launch herself vertically into the air, leaping over Hawthorne's head. She would land on his back, riding him like a bronco, biting softly at his ears while he spun in circles, tail wagging furiously. They developed a unique language, a pigeon dialect of play. Hawthorne learned that if he wagged his tail too hard and hit her, she would bat his nose with a sheathed paw, a warning. He learned to inhibit his bite, mouthing her with extreme gentleness. Willow learned that when Hawthorne bowed, it wasn't a pounce preparation, it was an invitation. She learned to tolerate his slobbery grooming, even if she cleaned herself immediately after with fastidious annoyance. Visitors to the sanctuary were mesmerized. The center had set up a live feed, and people from around the world tuned in to watch the odd couple. It became a sensation, a beacon of hope in a divided world. If a wolf and a bobcat could find common ground, Surely there was hope for everyone else. However, Sarah knew the science. She knew that this Eden couldn't last forever. One Tuesday in late August, the reality of their biological destiny began to intrude. Hawthorne was now significant in size, roughly 40 pounds, with adult teeth coming in. Willow was 12 pounds of muscle and dynamite. They were resting in the shade of a large oak tree in their enclosure. A wild raven landed on the fence line, croaking loudly. In an instant, the energy shifted. Hawthorne scrambled to his feet, his hackles raising, a low, guttural growl vibrating in his chest. His eyes locked onto the bird with a predatory intensity that was no longer puppy-like. It was the look of a killer. Willow reacted differently. She flattened herself into the grass, vanishing into the camouflage, her tail twitching. She was stalking. For a moment, they were a team. But then, Hawthorne lunged at the fence, barking explosively. The sudden movement startled Willow. Instinct took over. She hissed, lashed out with claws fully extended, and struck Hawthorne across the muzzle before scrambling up the tree to safety. Hawthorne yelped, backing away, confused. Blood welled on his nose. He looked up at the tree, whining, his tail tucked. He didn't understand why his sister had hurt him. He wanted comfort. Willow glared down from the branch, pupils blown wide, panting. Her survival brain had seen a flash of large predator movement and reacted before she realized it was just her friend. Sarah entered the enclosure immediately, separating them. She cleaned Hawthorne's scratch. It was superficial, but the emotional wound was visible. Later that evening, the staff gathered in the break room. The mood was somber. "It's starting," Dr. Evans said, looking at the incident report. "The size gap is becoming a safety hazard. Hawthorne doesn't know his own strength, and Willow is becoming reactive because she feels the size difference. One accidental bite from him could crush her spine. One defensive swipe from her could blind him." "They still sleep together every night," Sarah argued, though her voice lacked its usual conviction. "You see how they groom each other. The bond is still there." "The bond is there," Evans agreed. "But the instincts are maturing. Wolves have a high prey drive. Bobcats are prey to wolves. We are fighting millions of years of DNA. If we wait until a serious accident happens, we've failed them." Sarah looked out the window at the enclosure. Hawthorne was pacing the fence line, looking up at the tree where Willow was still perched. He let out a mournful howl. Willow chirped back, a soft bird-like sound, and climbed down. They met in the middle. Hawthorne licked her face. She rubbed her cheek against his leg. "I know," Sarah whispered, "but breaking them apart, it's going to crush them." "We don't have to break them apart completely," Mark suggested, leaning forward. "What about the transition enclosures, the ones with the shared mesh wall?" The decision was made. It was a careful, heartbreaking, but necessary calculation. Safety had to come first. The transition began the next week. The staff constructed a heavy-gauge wire mesh wall down the center of the large enclosure. It was distinct from a cage wall. It allowed for full sensory contact, smell, sight, and limited touch, but prevented full body weight impact. The day they separated them was one of the hardest of Sarah's career. They lured Hawthorne into the left side with a deer leg and Willow into the right with a quail. When the gate clicked shut between them, the realization wasn't immediate. They ate their food. Then, Hawthorne trotted over to where Willow usually napped. He bumped his nose into the wire. He stopped, confused. He pawed at the mesh. Willow was on the other side. She reached through the wire with a paw, trying to hook his ear as she usually did. Her paw went through, brushing his fur, but she couldn't jump on him. Panic set in. Hawthorne began to pace, his anxiety ramping up. He whined, a high-pitched, frantic sound. He dug at the ground beneath the wire, trying to tunnel through. Willow paced the other side, mirroring his movements, mewling loudly. "This is cruel," a new intern whispered, wiping her eyes. "It's necessary," Sarah said, though her own heart felt like lead. "Keep watching. Give them time." For 3 days, the sanctuary was filled with the sounds of their protest. Hawthorne howled, not the confident call of a pack leader, but the broken cry of a child separated from his family. Willow refused to eat for 2 days, sitting pressed against the mesh, staring at him. Sarah spent her nights in the observation blind, watching them, questioning everything. Had she made a mistake saving them this way? Had she set them up for a lifetime of longing? But then, the adaptation began. On the 4th morning, the sun broke over the ridge, bathing the enclosure in that same crisp golden light that had greeted them the day they arrived. Sarah looked through her binoculars and saw something that made her breath catch. Hawthorne was lying down, his massive back pressed firmly against the wire mesh. On the exact other side, pressed against the same spot of wire, was Willow. They were back to back, separated by steel but connected by heat and presence. Hawthorne turned his head and licked the wire. Willow purred, a sound loud enough to be heard from the observation deck, and rubbed the side of her face against the metal where his tongue was. They had stopped fighting the barrier and had started living with it. Over the next few months, a new routine emerged. It was different, yes, but it was beautiful in its own way. When the keepers brought enrichment toys, Hawthorne would drag his, usually a heavy elk antler, to the fence. Willow would bring hers, a feather chaser or a rabbit hide. They would lie there side by side, chewing on their respective prizes, occasionally pausing to sniff noses through the grid. They developed a game of fence tag. Hawthorne would bow and run along the fence line. Willow would chase him from her side, leaping off rocks and logs, keeping pace with his loping stride. They were racing together, separated but synchronous. Fall turned to winter. Snow blanketed the sanctuary. Hawthorne had grown into a magnificent timber wolf, over 100 pounds of silver and charcoal muscle. He was powerful, regal, and intimidating to everyone except his keepers and his best friend. Willow was a fully grown bobcat, compact, muscular, with ear tufts that twitched with every snowflake. She was elusive and ghost-like, often hiding from the public, only revealing herself when Hawthorne came near. One freezing December evening, Sarah was doing her final rounds. The air was biting cold, the kind that freezes breath in the lungs. She walked quietly to the enclosure. The park was closed, the visitors gone. There, under the moonlight, she saw them. Hawthorne had dug a shallow depression in the snow right against the fence. He was curled up there, his thick tail wrapped over his nose to preserve warmth. On the other side, Willow had cleared a spot on a wooden platform she had dragged over, or rather nudged over the course of weeks, to be flush against the wire. She was curled up, her back pressed as close to Hawthorne's fur as the physics of the fence allowed. They were asleep. Sarah watched as Hawthorne shifted in his sleep, letting out a soft yip. Immediately, without waking up, Willow stretched a paw through the mesh and rested it on the wolf's shoulder. Hawthorne settled instantly. It defied every textbook on zoology. It challenged every assumption about predator instincts. The wolf, who should have seen the cat as competition or prey, saw her as his anchor. The cat, who should have seen the wolf as a death sentence, saw him as her protector. They would never run free in the wild together. They would never hunt together. The reality of the world was too harsh for that. But here, in this sanctuary carved out of the Oregon wilderness, they had created a micro-universe where the rules of nature were suspended in favor of the rules of love. Sarah turned off her flashlight, not wanting to disturb them. She walked back to the clinic, the snow crunching under her boots. The heaviness that usually sat on her shoulders, the weight of all the animals she couldn't save, the tragedies she witnessed daily, felt lighter tonight. The sign at the entrance of the sanctuary read, High Ridge Wildlife Sanctuary. Rescue, rehabilitate, release. Sarah thought about Hawthorne and Willow. They would never be released. But as she looked back at the two silhouettes resting against each other in the moonlight, silver fur merging with tawny gold, she knew they had been rescued in the only way that truly mattered. They had saved each other. The staff had worried that the separation would break them. Instead, it proved the strength of their bond. It proved that connection isn't about proximity or utility. It isn't about being the same species or speaking the same language. It is simply the quiet, enduring agreement to not let the other face the dark alone. As Sarah locked the main gate, a wolf howl pierced the night air, deep, resonant, and strong. And a second later, a sharp, raspy cry joined it. It wasn't a perfect harmony. It was messy and strange, a biological dissonance. But to anyone listening with their heart, it was the most perfect song in the world. The wolf and the bobcat were home. Epilogue. 3 years later. The educational plaque in front of the Predator Friendship exhibit had become the most photographed spot in the state. It read, Hawthorne, gray wolf, and Willow, bobcat. Born 2022. Hand-raised together. Though they live in separate spaces for their safety, their bond remains unbroken. Watch closely. A young boy, no older than 7, pressed his face against the safety glass of the public viewing area. Mom, look, the wolf is sleeping. He's huge, the mother whispered, awestruck by the massive animal lounging near the center divider. Where's the kitty? The boy asked. Bobcats are hard to see, honey. They like to hide. The boy scanned the enclosure. Then he pointed. There, look at his ear. The mother followed his finger. Hawthorne was asleep, but his ear was swiveled backward, pressed against the wire mesh divider. And there, on the other side, grooming the fur on Hawthorne's ear through the holes in the fence, was Willow. She worked meticulously, licking the wolf's fur with her rough tongue. Hawthorne's leg kicked slightly in a reflex scratch, a look of pure bliss on his sleeping face. Why are they doing that? The boy asked. Aren't they supposed to be enemies? Sarah, who happened to be walking by with a bucket of feed, stopped. She looked at the boy, then at the wolf and the cat who had defied all odds. They are supposed to be, Sarah said, smiling, the warmth of the afternoon sun hitting her face. But they decided to be friends instead, proving that just because the world expects you to be one thing doesn't mean you can't choose to be something else. The boy watched them for a long time. I like that, he said. Me too, Sarah replied. Me too. She walked away, leaving the boy to watch the miracle, the work of the sanctuary continuing around her. But in that quiet corner of the world, under the watchful eyes of the ponderosa pines, the wolf and the bobcat slept on, dreaming the same dream, separated by steel but united by a love that was wilder than nature itself.